Well, I'm happy to, Bart, and you're right. It was definitely some divine intervention because Ed Weins discussed multiple times over the last 2.5 years a thin thread that put us together that could literally have gone the other way. And as I was sharing with you when we spoke yesterday, back in at the end of January 2020, I went in for my annual stress test because at age 47, I did have a heart attack. And as a result of that, was given a stent to correct the blockage in my widowmaker artery at that time at age 47. So here I was 20 years later, and I was doing my annual stress test, and I collapsed on the treadmill. Literally felt like I was having another heart attack. Well, sure enough, once I got to the catheterization lab 3 hours later, that same artery, the widowmaker artery, was 97% blocked. So that was what was creating the issue that occurred during my stress test. Well, at the same time, as I left the doctor's catheterization lab, they prescribed a blood thinner that ultimately 2 months later created and caused some internal bleeding. And over a 3-day period, Bart, I lost almost 60% of my blood. And when the paramedics carried me out of my home here in Florida on March 15th, 2020, and I saw the look of fright and terror in my wife's eyes, I thought I would never return. Well, thank God they did get the bleeding stopped. A few days later, I got out, but I was so anemic at that point, I couldn't function. I literally had no energy and I was sleeping 24 one day. I slept 26 hours. And I know my wife was constantly checking on me to make sure I was breathing because, she was fearful, as weak as I was and as anemic as I was, that I, would survive this. Well, a couple of weeks after getting out of the hospital, I was able to get on a Zoom call with the help of my wife, crawling from the bedroom across the hall to this office. She had to bungee cord me into my chair because this is what I would do. I was so weak, I would just flop over. So she bungee corded me into this chair so that I could get on a Zoom call to tell the mastermind group that I was a part of, that thank God Ed Weins was also a part of, that what had happened. And Ed ultimately spoke with another friend of mine, Chris Caldwell, who was in a previous network with us, and they sent me some product. So 8 of these amazing blue bottles showed up on my front doorstep. And when I got them, they told me they were sending them, and I kind of suspected Ed, who had always got on our Zoom with an ASEA shirt like yours or an ASEA hat. He always wears his hat. And so I kind of thought he might have been in network marketing or multi-level marketing, but I didn't know. He never mentioned that in our mastermind group. Well, when I called Chris up and said, Chris, is this the product that you and Ed want me to try? And he said, yes. I said, well, let me first just clear up something. Is this network marketing or multi-level marketing? And he said, yes, it is. And I said, well, with all due respect, I appreciate your kindness, but I've been there, I've done that. I don't want to ever do it again. Why don't I just send this back to you? I have a UPS account, and then we'll just remain friends. And he said, no, Mike, this is my gift, mine and Ed. We wanted you to have this, no strings attached. We think this will help you. I said, well, as long as we understand that, I'll be happy to try. Well, Bart, literally in 2 weeks of drinking 12 ounces a day, I went from sleeping around the clock to getting up, having a life again. Instead of sleeping all the time, I was up. I could walk downstairs on my own, 2 flights of stairs, and basically go throughout the day. I remember the first day I did that, my wife goes, wow, I've not heard you say you're tired once all day. And she was right, I wasn't. Well, the real proof in the pudding came 7 weeks after I started drinking ASEA on April the 7th, 2020. It's a date I'll remember till my dying day. But 7 weeks after that, I went in for blood work, and the medical professionals, Bart, had told me that it was going to take 6 months up to possibly a year to get my hemoglobin and my iron levels back to normal. Well, when I went in for the 7 week blood work, the doctors were, it was like 20 questions. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? What, have you changed your diet? I mean, all like, it was like 20 questions. I go, why are you asking me these questions? They go, well, you know, we told you when you checked out it would be up to 6 months, possibly a year for you to get your hemoglobin back to normal. They said, it's actually a couple of tenths beyond perfect. It's supposed to be 14.5. Yours is 14.7. Now understand, 7 weeks earlier when I got out of the hospital, my hemoglobin was 7.1, right at the threshold of a blood transfusion. And so here it was, 14.7 7 weeks later. So, you know, I showed them the blue bottle. They had never heard of it. They did hear and recognize the lab, Bioagilitics, on the back of the bottle. And they said, well, that we know about that lab. So this is probably good product that you're taking. I said, I don't care what your thoughts are. You couldn't stop me from taking it at this point, because I wasn't shocked by the blood results, Bart, because I felt amazing. I felt amazing. And I told a friend of mine today, we had a conversation because unfortunately his sister passed away and he's on the product. And he said, how are you feeling, Mike? I said, Larry, I feel probably better than I felt since my youth. I mean, I don't know when I've ever felt so good. And I have energy sustained throughout the day. And it's a true blessing. But literally the mastermind group, Bart, that I became a part of, that Ed was in, I almost didn't do it. My wife was at the office the day the mastermind coach invited me to be on there. And I had already decided, number one, I didn't want the vulnerability, because I knew mastermind groups, if they're really good, you have to be vulnerable. You have to grow. You have to put yourself out there. And I'd gotten in a rut for a while where I'd stopped reading, stopped listening to good motivational tapes and things like that. So I wasn't at a space in my life that I wanted to go through that. But my wife knew that I needed it, because she kept mouthing, you need to do this. And thank God she was there to, you know, encourage me to do it. And I did. And it was not a low investment. It was a pretty high investment to do it. But I'm here to tell you, I'm thankful that I made that investment, thankful that God put Ed Weens in my path, because I'm here today. And yes, Bart, I am doing network marketing and having a blast at it. We have huge teams all over, including the UK. The Nebraska Cornhusker contingency is like, man, I live to take a phone call every day from one of those guys. So we're showing up. A busload of us are showing up September 28th, and the Cornhusker contingency. And they've named me Colonel Cornhusker.
I love it. I love it. When we were chatting yesterday, your health and energy was so low, and you were in such a kind of a deep, dark space that you kind of thought, you mentioned yesterday that, hey, I'm not sure if I want to keep going.
I went to bed on a Thursday at 4:30. I woke up at 6:30 the next day, Friday, 26 hours of continuous sleep. And I sat there and I said, Lord, you're giving me some pretty strong signals that this is my time and I'm ready, but I'd prefer to hang a little longer to see some of my grandkids graduate from school. You know, we've got 7 grandkids. At that point, they were 14 down to 3. Now they're 5 to 16. And so I was very fearful that it was my time, the end of my life. So
it's amazing how these coincidences tie us together. And